There are so many angles that I want to take with this, and quite frankly, I don't really know where to start. There, of course, are spoilers ahead. So I guess for starters, I'll briefly summarize it like this. There are three ways to approach this movie in this video, which will, for you, really determine if you will enjoy the movie or not. You can approach it like a completely ignorant normie. You can approach it as someone who has watched some or all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. And you can approach it like a comic book fan who happens to be fond of the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. So, you approach this film like a normie that is watching this as a standalone film, which it feels like that's specifically who this movie was made for. You may think it's a decent movie. Not absolutely terrible, certainly not good. If you aren't knowledgeable on the comics but have watched the movies, this is your first time being introduced to this character. You're going to have some questions and you may be a little bit indifferent on the movie. But if you are like myself and you are a fan of the comics and you've at least thought the Marvel Cinematic Universe has done a decent job, let's say decent, you are going to think this is the most criminal and disrespectful movie to exist in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and you will be shaking your head for the better part of this movie. So let me summarize the movie from beginning to end credit scene. So Carol Danvers is referred to as Vers, right? And is a member of the Kree Star Force and does not remember her past. She sees flashes and dreams which have this woman that she cannot recognize in them. This lady is apparently important to her because the supreme being of the Kree takes her form when she talks to Vers. The Star Force team is led by Yon-Rogg, of all people. They go to a planet on a mission and they get ambushed by some Skrulls. Carol was kidnapped, breaks free, and crash lands on Earth, which is a planet that the Skrulls are going to after they extracted some information from Vers. There's an engine that they want to get that's owned by a Wendy Lawson. Meanwhile, the Star Force clique is of course going to travel and follow them towards Earth. This is when Carol meets up with Fury and Coulson, who are of course of S.H.I.E.L.D., right? Now Fury and Carol, they link up to go find Wendy Lawson. They discover she died in a plane crash that was covered by the government. Now Vers sees a picture of herself with Lawson as an Air Force pilot, and they then go visit a Maria Rambeau because she was knowledgeable of the crash and Lawson. Now Maria has a little girl named Monica. This is where Vers learns of her name being Carol and some of her past is being sort of pieced together. And the Skrulls also arrived at Maria's home and reveal that the Kree really isn't all that she thought they were, and they've been waging unjust wars against the Skrulls. The leader, Talor, had this black box, right? That was part of the crash. And he was like, all right, I will reveal this to you if you help me out. This reveals what actually happened in that plane crash. Now, basically, Wendy Lawson was actually an undercover Kree by the name of Mar-Vell. Star Force came to get her. They shot the plane down. She was then shot by Yon-Rogg before she could shoot that engine, and Carol grabs the gun, shoots the engine, and it blows up. That's how she got her powers. But she was unconscious and memoryless, and that's how she was able to really be taken back and sort of trained as this soldier. So Carol, Maria, Fury, and a stupid alien cat follows the Skrulls to this ship that was cloaked, which had the Tesseract and a bunch of Skrulls on it. This was a ship that Lawson was sort of facilitating. Of course, they were joined by the Star Force clique, and during the conflict, Carol removes this power dampener that was stuck to her neck and then reveals her real true power, and she's OP as hell. She of course defeats them, and the cat eats the Tesseract, which goes with Fury. He watches over this cat in the future, and the cat also is the damn cat is why his eye's messed up. That's the excuse that they give. Scratched his eye. Anyway, Carol gives Fury a pager that he can use in the case of emergencies only, and she takes off with the Skrulls into space. The mid-credit scene deals with the Avengers having that pager that Carol gave to Fury, not understanding what it was. They just know it's important because Fury had it. but it went off and they were trying to get it to come back on. Then Carol shows up out of nowhere behind them asking, "Where is Fury?" Post-credit scene is the cat at a later date throwing up the Tesseract. So now you all know what happened without having to see this movie. And here are my thoughts. Like I said, normies will think this movie is okay, or it's fine. The action was solid, I guess. Things didn't kick in high gear until the very end when Carol goes full OP. For the most part of the movie, all she can really do is shoot these energy beams. But being a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this is bull jive, and this is criminal to the fans of the source material because the vast majority of this crap doesn't even make sense. Almost everything that I speculated about this film came into fruition. Brie Larson does not make this role at all. She's mundane, she's average at best, and she's just there as a default. They could have got anybody. Now, some people will nitpick that and take issue with it and call it a miscast. Me personally, there are far more other things that I take issue with that isn't specifically with her acting. I called this out. I said that this could be a setup. This could be a lazy excuse to slide in a female character into this star role. Captain Marvel is a newly incarnated version of Carol Danvers, who was Miss Marvel before that, of course. There's no evidence of her ever being Miss Marvel in this movie. And as I've discussed, she was never a popular character to begin with, and comic fans were not fond of her, which is evident in the amounts of reboots and the fact that her comics are so stacked that they're hanging off of the damn shelves in abundance at any comic book shop. Yet, even though nobody asked for her, Marvel continued to force the issue, right? And they gave her a movie that slid right after the biggest cliffhanger and right before Endgame to incentivize you to see it. They did everything they could to make this unliked generic character a prominent figure. It's just a forced, lazy effort, and the producers ought to be ashamed of themselves. People figured that due to Brie Larson's comments and the promotional schemes, this was just going to be used as an excuse to get some token strong female in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because apparently Black Widow and Scarlet Witch, they just aren't good enough, right? And you can tell that this was the agenda and how this movie was really put together, right? When she said that this was a feminist movie, she wasn't lying, but not like the good kind of feminist and the just be a badass female, the Wonder Woman kind of way. Instead, it's the I have to let you all know that I'm a girl kind of way. The beginning of the movie has like these flashbacks of Carol as a kid doing things that are being done predominantly by males, right? And being told that she can't do it, being doubted, right? And she had to go through great lengths to become this female pilot. Some dude even makes a joke and says that there's a reason why they call it the cockpit, for Christ's sakes. The last fight scene has no doubts just a girl playing in the background. That's in the last fight scene. I'm not making this up. It's a complete projection, and it was so predictable. It was so predictable that they do this. Of course, they just couldn't let her be badass, right? They had to overemphasize, and I mean overemphasize, that she was a woman in the process. It was a complete rush job with them scrambling really for excuses to bring this token strong female into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And in the context of the MCU, it was a terrible job. The Avengers had all of these previous issues, and now, though Fury has never brought her up or even alluding to the fact that she's existed, she happens to now show up? And how the hell did the Tesseract go from Howard Stark to Wendy Lawson, right? The main question you're gonna ask though is, why now? And they don't even really attempt to answer that. It's just that they slid her in, and you're going to have to deal with it. But canonically or source material wise, this makes absolutely no sense and is completely criminal. Remember, I did that video. That video I did was what? The top 5 possible endings that could save Captain Marvel. Best endings that I could come up with. Well, none of those happened. The cosmic beings were not introduced. Monica Rambeau is there as a kid. Doesn't make any sense. There's no mention of previous Captain Marvels or Quasars, and no mention of the quantum bands. Marvel, well, we'll get to that in a minute. And of course, Captain Marvel didn't die or turn into dust or anything like that. So none of those happened, and the plot line is blatant disrespect to the source material. As I mentioned, it's like Miss Marvel never existed. The only main thing that they got semi-correct was how she got her powers. And really that's just in the fact that it was from an explosion, so it's more loose of a depiction. But the whole Star Force stuff doesn't make any sort of sense, and the Monica Rambeau thing is completely stupid, as she exists there as a little girl who should have been named something else, like not Monica Rambeau. Monica is blatant disrespect, or naming her Monica is disrespect. I'm sure she's going to appear as an adult and aged in Endgame, but come on. They have her as this little girl that looks up to her, and that's just flat out stupid and never really happened. Monica was a grown-ass adult with powers before she ever even linked up with Carol Danvers or knew she existed. Hell, before she even knew the OG Captain Marvel existed. I can't believe that they had the nerve to call her Monica Rambeau. But by far, and I mean by far, the most disrespectful thing is that they had the nerve to turn Mar-Vell, the OG Captain Marvel, into a woman. It's sort of like just being the character in name, like Monica is, but this is a million times worse, right? They called her Wendy Lawson, which is just a spin-off of Walter Lawson, which is an alias of OG Mar-Vell. So they're going out of their way, really, to sex change the character, the classic Captain Marvel, right? We are talking about the first person to inherit this name, the first person to ever defeat Thanos, and they changed him into some old female pilot? What? And of course her backstory isn't exactly the same, but it's similar in the fact that Mar-Vell in the comics was an exiled member of the Kree that was, crucial in the Skrull and the Kree Wars, right? This was what Mar-Vell was doing in the movies. So again, they are just crapping on the source material and going out of their way to do it. They could have at least named her Phyla-Vell, maybe, which is Mar-Vell's daughter, but nope. They just sex changed the OG Mar-Vell, though not nearly as powerful or cosmically aware. This movie was written in terribly. It was as if some feminists infiltrated Marvel and forced them to write this in. It doesn't really make any sense in the context of the storyline, the main plot. The only reason this seems to be in the past is so they can just say, well, she's been away all this time. That's lazy. It's a complete feminist boost when you look at it like that, in which they are treating Captain Marvel like this great white hope, a character as unpopular as her. It's forced. They even had the nerve to call her Avenger. That was her nickname, and that's what really influenced Fury and gave him the idea to call the Avengers the Avengers. Think about how disrespectful that is. They are saying that Carol Danvers inspired the Avengers Initiative. This is false clout, and now she's set up to help save the day in Endgame. People said, don't jump to conclusions on what this movie could be about, but it was almost everything that everybody thought that it was going to be, at least the people that were criticizing it prematurely. So when people think that there's a chance that she may be primary in defeating Thanos, we can't say that's out of the realm of possibility, because, hell, they made this predictable ass movie. So if it drops and she one punches the goddamn Infinity Gems off of Thanos, I can't say I'd be surprised. But no lie, the producers or whoever the hell made this movie was part of developing this ought to be ashamed of themselves and should be apologizing to comic book fans, right? Even if you're not a fan of comics, how they wrote this into the MCU was a complete joke, an utter joke. It craps on the source material, and it was forced. So I absolutely conclude that the only reason it exists was to have a strong female at the forefront of the Avengers, right? But they prioritized that over good writing. I say this about comics too, and how they sacrifice good storytelling and character building for non-white male characters by overemphasizing their minority status. I simply don't think this movie does nearly as good if it exists outside of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and you can say that for every movie that's in there, but I think this is unique considering the placement, right? It's a crap character that is being artificially given this undeserving icon status, and Marvel seems to be all the way in with trying to force this character into being liked. There's nothing in this movie that's worth a damn, so if you want to skip it, all you need to know is that she lives and is seen with some of the remaining Avengers in the mid-credit scene. The movie itself seems to just be there to prop up this character into being liked and give the people a lousy excuse regarding her existence. even though it's still stupid. I'm telling you, if you're a comic book fan, man, it ain't worth it. I was at a dine-in movie and I almost threw my damn chicken strips at the screen on multiple occasions, man. Being even remotely knowledgeable on these characters will actually hinder your enjoyment. It's hard to guess the direction, I guess, that Marvel is gonna go in, but seeing this movie doesn't give me a whole lot of hope. We'll just see what happens in Endgame. These fools made Marvel a goddamn woman, bro. An old ass white woman.